Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. A very warm welcome to our distinguished speakers and guests to today's event, Education Chapter, Introduction to Direct Subsidy Scheme and International Schools in Hong Kong, organized by the Hong Kong Talent Engage. My name is Edwin. I'm the MC of today. And we would like to thank English Schools Foundations, ESF, and St. Paul's College for the great support today. We're also live streaming on LinkedIn and WeChat as well. Audience could raise their questions in the chat room at the Q&A session later on. Let's start by inviting our first guest speaker, Mr. Bill Garnett, the principal of ESF Peak School. The ESF Peak School is a well-known international school in Hong Kong that offers a lively approach and multicultural environment to learn. Principal Garnett will introduce ESF tutoring education, IB curriculum, and pathway. Let's welcome Principal Garnett.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bill Garnett, and I've been in Hong Kong. This is my 18th year. I've been principal of ESF Peak School. This is my 14th year. So I'm what's called an experienced principal, but I've also worked with ESF for 18 years. So a little bit about ESF. For those that, and Julie, my colleague, will be joining us shortly to talk about admissions. So I'll talk about ESF and Peak School, and then Julie will talk about the key admissions information for you. So English Schools Foundation, it's been in Hong Kong for over 50 years, almost 60 years now. There's 22 schools, including kindergartens, primary, secondary, and a special school, Jockey Club Sierra Row. We have over 18,000 students, over 2,000 staff members. And more than 75 different nationalities are represented across those 18,000 families that we support. We pride ourselves on education on the cutting edge, and it's excellent outcomes for all, and I'll go through the outcomes that we've achieved as a foundation in the last IB round of diploma. Our vision, very straightforward, and something that I'm very proud of, is for every student to be the best that they can be. That's what we want from our students, simply to be the best that they can be. So I mentioned before 22 schools. There are the locations. So kindergartens, primary, secondary, and all through schools. All through schools simply means they're from year 1 all the way to year 13. Primary is year 1 to 6, and secondary is year 7 to 13. Now, we're a through train. So what that means is, if your child is offered a position at K1 or K2, they are guaranteed a place at a primary school, at an ESF primary school. If your child is offered a place at a primary school, you are guaranteed a place at that primary school's feeder secondary school. So for example, let's walk that through. So Hillside is a kindergarten. It may be that a Hillside family decides to come to Peak School. Peak School, one of the primary schools. The children, the families that come to Peak School, they are guaranteed a place at Island School, and that's our feeder school. So it just means that for a lot of families it's really important, because once they get into kindergarten, their education with ESF is guaranteed all the way through until they leave high school. I mentioned before about outstanding results. So this is our diploma, our year 13 diploma results for last academic year. 45 points is the maximum points you can score, and we had 24 children across the foundation. To put that into context, most schools are very, very proud to have 1 or 2 students achieve 45. Achieving 45 is rare, and for as a foundation to have 24 is simply outstanding. And you can see also we had 83 students awarded a bilingual diploma, which again is very impressive. Our average score for our students with a diploma is 36.6. When you consider that the world average is 30. So our children are performing 20%, our students are performing 20% above the world average. And you can see that 33% of our students receive 40 plus points. And when you're talking about 40 plus points, that pretty much means that they can choose which university they want to go to, because the universities are desperate to have them. Where do they go? Where do our students go? When they go to university, predominantly you'll notice it's the Northern Hemisphere with over 60% UK, Canada and US. What's pleasing to see, and certainly in the 18 years that I've been here, Hong Kong universities are doing a great job of attracting local talent. So actually more and more of our students are choosing to stay in Hong Kong for their university degree. So a little bit now about Peak School, but when I talk about Peak School, you can imagine that I'm talking about the other primary schools across ESF as well. So across all ESF schools, what's really important is our children feel safe, they're kind to each other, they're happy, they're learning and engaged. We believe strongly that if they're not safe, feeling safe, they're not being kind to each other, and if they're not happy, they're not going to learn. So it's really important we look after their well-being as well. And some of the children have anxiety and need special support, and we provide that support. This is our mission statement at Peak School. You'll notice ESF mission statements talk a lot about the child, about skills, and also about being global citizens. So there'll be, that's part of being an IB and an ESF student. Peak School is over 100 years, since 1910. It started off in somebody's living room with 5 children who worked for Swire. And then it went from there, it went to the Peak Fire Station, which is currently the Peak Fire Station, and then they ended up in the building we're currently in, this one here in 1953. So it's got a long history of Hong Kong, and I'm really proud to be part of a school that's been in Hong Kong for that long. So a little bit about Peak School. We're 360 students. One of our primary schools has, another primary school is 360, and then Beacon Hill is 540, and then some of the other schools are 720, and we have schools, primary schools with also 900 students. So Peak School is one of the smaller ESF primary schools, but you can see that we're very well staffed with 55 staff members, and we have 2 classes in each year group, with some of our ESF schools having 3, 4 or even 5 in a year group. There are 30 students, and there's always at least 2 adults in the class with them. So a little bit about our demographics. It's hard to read, but the point is we represent almost 30 nationalities in terms of our school, our children out of school, and in terms of our staff, we have children from staff from around the world, both hemispheres. So we got the best teachers from around the world. We have hundreds and hundreds of applicants desperate to come to Hong Kong, desperate to join ESF. So how do we learn? Well, I'll get a little bit of a breakdown there. IB and Peak School and ESF is about developing the whole child. Obviously academics are really important, but so too are the skills that they need to learn so that when they join secondary schools and join the workforce, they've got those skills. Communication skills, research skills, problem-solving skills, ability to collaborate with others, self-management skills. Those are the skills that they need now and into the future. So it's not just about knowledge, it's also about the skills. But also, they have to be good at everything. We expect them to be able to do sports and arts, languages, as well as the traditional curriculum subjects you'll be aware of. In terms of a typical day, so we start at 8:30, our children arrive at 8, we start at 8:30, then they have a break for 20 minutes from 10:30 to 10:50, then they have lunch, 45-minute lunch, and 15 minutes to eat their lunch before that, and then we finish at 3 o'clock. So 8:30 till 3 o'clock. Some ESF schools start a little bit earlier and finish a little bit earlier, but a typical day is around that. Now most ESF schools, in fact, particularly Peak School, if you want to talk about homework, we don't give a lot of homework. We want our children to be playing with other children, we want them to be spending time with their parents or other children, cooking, playing sports, not just doing worksheets. So if you want your child to have hours and hours of homework, we're not the right school for you, okay? But if you want your child to be well-rounded and to have opportunities across the curriculum, then we are. The curriculum, speaking of the curriculum, so we're the IB Baccalaureate or PYP, Primary Years Program. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but we still teach the maths and the English, which is reading, writing and spelling. We have the units of inquiry, which cover the traditional science and social studies and those other topics that you'd be familiar with. And we also have specialists. So our specialist provision, that is at ESF schools and primary schools, our second language is Chinese, Putonghua. So our children every day learn about 30 to 45 minutes. The older children, 45 minutes, at least 45 minutes a day for Chinese. They also have expressive arts, music, drama, and they also have PE. And they get to go to the library once a week, and they also, at Peak School, work with an environmental teacher who will teach them things about the environment. The Learning Diversity team, that is a team that supports children who perhaps need additional support. So we might have children who have high levels of anxiety. Perhaps they need support with their well-being. Perhaps they need academic support. We have a team of 8 adults who support our students, and that's the Learning Diversity team. And we also have language support. At Peak School, we have 2 teachers, 1 EA and 1 part-time teacher, that support students with their language development. So I need to be clear here that ESF has, their condition is that the child can access the curriculum in English. So that your child would need a certain level of English to be able to be accepted into Peak School. But sometimes when they are accepted, they need just a little bit more extra support. So we have teachers who can support them, maybe in the classroom or one-on-one or in small groups, just to help boost their language proficiency so they can be even more successful. But we're not a bilingual school. That's really important to know. ESF is not a bilingual education. 90% of what we teach is in English. So our students need to have that level of language to access the curriculum. So the curriculum is the IB, International Baccalaureate, and we're a primary years program, our kindergartens and our primary schools. As you move into the secondary schools, some do the MYP, middle years program, they all do the diploma program, which I mentioned earlier before with those fantastic results. It's a very busy slide, I apologise for everything, but really it's about developing that whole child. So it's those are the areas that we don't teach the IB, we teach children. But this is a framework that we can use to support our children in all areas of their development. We have what's called units of inquiry, and they focus on, if I can just, they focus on the ones on this area here, with sharing the planet, who we are, so they get to know more about themselves, where we are in place and time, so we get to focus on Hong Kong, China and other parts of the world. How we express ourselves, so again that's more to do with performing arts. How the world works, more of your science, and how we organise ourselves, and that's looking at systems. How do they get to school, and then all the way to things like how governments work or how organisations work. But one of the key things I need to focus on is the action. We expect our students to take action. They need to understand that they can have an impact on this world, and what they do makes a difference. So we have students who raise money for organisations, we have students who write pamphlets or letters or emails to support organisations. They will bring in the NGOs to come in, so organisations that support children who are perhaps less privileged, or organisations that support animals in Hong Kong, and our students will support those organisations. We have what's called the learner profile or learner attributes, and this is what we expect our students. This is almost, when we talked about being well-rounded, those are the qualities that we expect from our students. And we're constantly focusing on them in the classroom. They're an important part of who we are. So you can see there, when we talk about homework, it's not balanced if you spend all day at school and then spend 5 hours doing homework. That's not being balanced. And principled is simply what we talk there. It's about actually making sure that you follow the rules, you respect others, and that you understand that your actions have an impact. So I mentioned earlier about our language program at Peak School. So in particular, it's simplified Chinese, so it's important you know that. I believe, Julie, RCHK is traditional, but the other ESF schools, so RCHK Renaissance College is traditional. The rest of the schools that were on the list are simplified Chinese. We have 3 levels. So at Peak School, we have 3 different classrooms. There's foundation, progression, and enhancement. And effectively, that just means we put the children in the class that best matches their needs. So the foundation, we have families who are new to Hong Kong who have not spoken a word of Putonghua Chinese in their life, so therefore their language proficiency is low. We also have families who have just come from China, who are fluent and need to be challenged. And they need that additional, they're very good at it. So I'll focus on the enhancement program. So Chinese is mother tongue, and we call it near native. So it effectively just means that they speak Chinese at home, and they have the ability to learn the language at school and at home. So there's oral and written. If going back slides here, these children here who are foundation, if they stay at Peak School for 6 years, they will have a really good understanding of the language, but they will not be fluent because we're not bilingual. However, what we do really well is we're able to support the children and make sure that they develop. So you can see there, it's a love of the language, but also using it confidently in all aspects of their learning. So CNN students typically follow into the secondary language acquisition phase 4 and 6, or the MYP Chinese language. Then they have the opportunity to do the IGCSE's first language exams. Then they can do at Chinese language A at higher or standard level for the IB diploma. So there's pathways for them. So we're very proud of the support and the opportunities we give our students who are fluent in Mandarin. And then in terms specifically at Peak School, but this, I would say this is probably indicative of all the ESF schools. We live in Hong Kong, China, so we want to reflect that, and we want to make sure that our children understand and value the traditions and the legends that make this area so special. So we in particular, we have the Mid-Autumn Festival. Now at Peak School, I have a large expat community. I have a lot of children from around the world. That is our biggest event. We get the most community members attending the Mid-Autumn Festival because it's special to us, it's special to them. Obviously Chinese New Year, very important time of the year for us. So we have week-long celebrations, and that involves all sorts of activities for our children and our parents as well. We have an orchestra, we have cultural visits in Hong Kong, and as part of the curriculum, they're learning about the traditions, the costume, the customs, and the legends of the curriculum. Our learning environment, we're very lucky up at the Peak for our school in Hong Kong to have a playground that's large enough to play all sorts of different sports. All our children go out at the same time. A lot of schools can't do that, but we're very lucky for space. And that's our library area, and we've got a music room as well, as I mentioned before. So it's just about utilising the space that we have. We're very lucky with the spaces that we have. And you may wonder, how do we care for our students? Because we talked about being safe, kind and happy. How do we make sure that's happening? How do we make sure that the children can be the best that they can be? So our curriculum focuses on well-being. We literally have a curriculum that helps our students understand how friendships work, how to relate to others, how to respect others. It's all part of what we do. Go back to being principled, going back to being respectful. Our staff are world leading. They're very, very highly qualified. We're very lucky to have the staff that we have. They are the best teachers that we can pick up coming to Hong Kong, and they do an amazing job across the foundation. And our students, not only do we actually, our staff support our students, but our students also support our other students. We have leaders, so we have house captains, we have leaders who will run activities and work with other students. We have a buddy system so that our younger children are supported by our older children. At Peak School, because we're a small school, we can really focus on being a family and making sure that everyone has a strong sense of belonging, a strong sense of being part of Peak School. So Hong Kong is a great place for outdoor activities. So we do school trips. In fact, last week I was on an outward bound trip with our Year 6 children. Our Year 5s also went out, and we get to do lots of things. I actually, along with the children, got to jump off what's called the jetty jump. So outward bound have a wharf, It's actually quite high. I was quite scared. I don't like heights. And when I jumped, the children cheered, but I was quietly a little bit scared. But they didn't pick it up, but I was. But it's about the children having these opportunities outside of the classroom, outside of school, to develop relationships, to coping. It's about challenges. Some of the children last week spent their first night away from home. So they never spent a night away from home before without their mum or dad. And here we were, they were away for 3 nights, all the way from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, including during the T8. We just stayed there. We kept them safe indoors, but the idea being is that this is about challenging themselves, but also learning. So we're up at the Peak. We've got the Matilda Hospital just right next door. Some of our children, in fact, quite a lot of our children, are born at the Matilda. So we go to the Matilda, and they get to see the doctor or the nurses that actually were there when they were born. But But when they come back, they can ask questions and they learn more. They can find out about how hospitals work, how hospitals help other people. And this, we're very lucky up at the Peak. This is actually just a walk around the Peak. So we've got a lot of space and greenery around the Peak, so we just use it. We're very lucky that way. But I guess the point is, we go to theatres, we go to cultural shows, we go to performances, and we also get a lot of people coming into Peak School, as do the other ESF schools, so experts and authors. Some of the authors, so children have their favourite authors. We can get them into the country, and then they can come into the school and talk about how they've become a successful author. Now, I could tell them, but I'm not a successful author, so let's get the people in who have done it, and these famous authors who the children know really well, and they're sitting next to them and just asking those questions and finding out that actually when this author was just a young child, they struggled to write, and now they're a famous author. So it just gives those children hope who perhaps don't have the confidence. At Peak School, and this is indicative of other ESF primary schools as well, the activities will change a little bit. ECAs are extra curriculum activities. So we have the curriculum, we have the IB curriculum, we spend a lot of time in the classroom with the students, but also after school and at lunchtimes, they get to do a lot of those other activities as well. The list changes all the time. We have new coaches that come in. A lot of these are run by our own staff, but we also have companies that come and hire the venues, and the children can, and the families can, with the professional coaches or the companies, they can pay a small fee to join at lunchtime or after school. So you can see there's a wide range there. Actually, we've just started a fencing club, and I don't think it's there because a student is a very talented fencer, represents Hong Kong, and some of her peers want to start a fencing club. We're not wearing all the gear, but we're just teaching some of the children. The children are teaching other children some of the moves. And our parents. So we talk about parents as partners at Peak School and all across ESF schools. The role the parents play is very important. We have meetings throughout the year where the students will sit down with the teacher and the parent and talk about their learning. You'll have a chance to sit down with the teachers and talk about your students' learning. The student is also there, and they will take their parents around the school to share their learning. So there's those opportunities. We also offer lots and lots of workshops, so you can come and learn more about Peak School and the curriculum and what we do. Our communication, we have what's called an ESF app, we have the newsletter, we're on Instagram, so there's lots of different ways that we communicate with our parents, but also the wider community. And the idea being is that we want you to know as much as we can share with you about what's happening at Peak School so you can support. So we'll share with you the outcomes. So in maths and English, you'll know what our students should be learning at each year group. The engagement, we've mentioned before, when we have trips, parents can come and help. They can come and join. They can be part of it. We have a wonderful PTA. We have a school council with parent reps, with community reps across Hong Kong, with ESF reps. So there's opportunities to be on the PTA, which is a Parent-Teacher Association, or even the school council. So you can have a big input there. And participation, like I said before, we've only got 360 children, but we can have 700, 800, 900 children, people turn up to our events. So that just goes to show that we have a lot of parent and community interest in what we do. Now, it says here primary to secondary, but also want to stress that we also have a transition. So let's say, for example, your child gets into an ESF kindergarten. The primary school that they're going to, another ESF primary school, there will be a transition. So your kindergarten child will go to the primary school and get to meet the other teachers. It might be that the PE teacher from Peak School goes to Hillside and teaches some of the children PE, just so the children get to know the teachers and staff at the school they're about to go to. Because you can imagine as a 4-year-old, it's a big leap to go from a place you know really well to another place you don't. So we make sure they get to come and visit, and we also talk to the parents and learn more about the child. Now at secondary, it's the same. Our children have been at Peak School for 6 years. They love Peak School. They don't want to leave. They keep asking, can we please have a year 7? Can we have a year 8? Why do you go all the way to year 13? But we don't, so they have to leave. So and they're anxious about that because they love our little school, and then they have to go to a big school which is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times bigger. So it's important that they have opportunities. They literally have days at the secondary schools. So for Peak School, we send our year 6s to Island School on a number of days through the year, so they get to meet the different teachers, the science teacher, the tech teacher, the design teacher, the maths teacher, and they get to know the buildings. And they get to know which house they're in. They get to know which children from other schools are going to be joining them. So that's a really important part of that school transition. So we literally have days throughout the year, particularly in Term 2 and Term 3, where the children have an opportunity to go and visit their new school. And that's really important because it's, as you can imagine, for the family as well. So parents get to go as well. It's not just the children. The parents get to go to the high school, Island School, if they're a Peak School parent, and learn more about Island School. Their principal will come to my school and present about Island School. So we really are a through train because we're really making sure that all the families at ESF get support as they move through the different levels. Now, I think I'm about ready. Last slide here. I've talked about our exceptional teachers. We really are. Our CEO, Belinda Greer, talks about having world leading teachers, and we do. It's the strongest staff I've ever worked with. Exceptional curriculum offer. IB has an amazing reputation. Universities want IB students. They are seeking for IB students because of how well-rounded they are. I talked about the responsible global citizenship. That'll be in most of the school's mission statements about understanding that they have a role to play and that they're part of, they're one person in this world and they have a role to play. I've also talked about pastoral care and well-being and how important that is. The curriculum's important, the academics are important, but you have to get that right. If you don't get that right, they're not going to learn, they're not going to be successful. A personalised approach. I know every single child at Peak School. I'm at the gate every single morning and I'm saying good morning to the students. And that's that, so when they come to Peak School, they know who we are, they know who I am, and they know all the other children, and our teachers know the children across all the schools in Hong Kong and ESF. And inspiration. It's about our children inspire us, but it's also our job to inspire them. So I'm going to stop there because I understand you want to introduce Geordie.
Thank you very much for your sharing,
Thank you, everyone.
Principal Garnett. Please take a seat. Moving on, we would like to invite Ms. Julie Wong, Head of Admissions of ESF Center, to come up and talk about ESF school admissions process and points to note. Ms. Wong, please.
Thank you. So my name is Julie Wong, and I'm the head of admissions at ESF. I'm located at the ESF Center, the main offices in Quarry Bay. I've been with ESF for over 15 years, so I quite know the process. It's evolved quite a bit from 15 years ago. The team at the ESF Center handles all admissions, kindergarten, primary, and secondary. The interviews are done at the school, but the paperwork, the application, the wait list is all handled at the main ESF offices. So I'll take you through the application procedures. So selecting preferences. Since we have a multiple number of schools, parents they may select the preferred schools. You can select up to 4 preferences on your application form, and we have no zoning. We did away with zoning about 2 years ago, which allows parents to basically choose whichever school you would like your child to attend. We encourage parents to go visit the school, as each school has its own feel, and the size of schools is different between, for example, we're talking about primary school. Bill's school is one of our smaller schools. There's 60 kids to 1 year group, and a larger school would be Kennedy School, which has 150 kids in 1 year group. So you may have a preference of a smaller community or a bigger community. The application, you may submit only 1 application in for your child. We also allow overseas parents to submit your form, so you don't have to wait till you arrive into Hong Kong to submit your online form. Bill was mentioning we have primary school connected to a secondary school. So you may want to do a little bit of homework as to which secondary school that you would like your child to go to. Listed here are all the primary schools on the right, and then on the left is the corresponding secondary school. So you'll see that the Bradbury School, which is located in Stubbs Road, just in Wan Chai area, all the students there will transition into South Island School. At the moment, South Island School is because it has 2 primary schools feeding in, it's very full. So if you're coming in from outside, so for example, you wait before applying to a secondary school, it's very difficult to get into South Island School because Bradbury School and Quarry Bay feed into South Island, and there's about 220 places for year 7. And there's 240 kids that are in year 6 transitioning up. Normally, we do have movement in year 6, and so some of those students will move on. They leave Hong Kong, so those students are guaranteed into South Island School, even though there's 240, and then not quite matching 220. So the criteria for admissions, this is for primary, and it also applies for secondary school as well. For kindergarten, it's simpler. Kindergarten is, because they're not writing yet, it's more on their readiness to start school. But for primary school and for secondary school, we will look at their ability, their language level. So they will need to have a level of English to access our curriculum. So that is the main criteria for admissions into one of our ESF schools. So that's through interview and assessment. If we talk about year 1, it's an interview. Our focus for year 1 is because they're so small, therefore, we set up the interview, the classroom like a kindergarten, and the children will come in and are seen in groups. We oftentimes try to group them into coming from the same kindergarten. So if a child is, for example, attending a Victoria kindergarten, we will group those students together so that they see familiar faces. They are comfortable coming into an interview, and it's for them, it's play. So the focus is play. So long as they're happy and they want to play, they will communicate with other students. It's normally the parents that are anxious. And so if you're calm, then your child is calm and will enjoy the process. For the older students, years 5 and above, they have written assessment, so a simple written assessment, where secondary schools, there's more involvement in the reading and writing and a written passage. We look at the school reports and then a reference letter for years 3 and above. Application processing. When you visit the website, you'll see terminology. One is called central admissions, the other is general admissions. Central admissions is our key timeline or processing for admissions into ESF. It refers specifically for K1, Year 1, and Year 7. The period that takes, the timing takes place in September of every year, so it's a key point not to miss the application period, which is September. So we just finished, or we're right now in the middle of play visits for K1 and Year 1 interviews and Year 7 interviews. Bill was noting that we do have our kindergartens transitioning up to Year 1, so that means there's limited availability for families coming into ESF. We're looking at approximately 500 places for Year 1. We have about 800 K2 kids transitioning up to our primary schools, which leaves 500, and that 500 is across the board, so including our private independent schools. For Year 7, it's even more limited because our Year 6s will transition up. We're looking at about 1,000, just over 1,000 Year 6 students for about 1,300 places. So we're looking at 150 to 200 coming in from outside of the system. So as mentioning general applications, that's for any other year group. We do take admissions mid-year, so if your family is coming in after Christmas, and we do have availabilities, for example, in January, we will fill that place. So we do mid-year admissions. So whenever there's a place available, our schools will interview. So when you, which means we have an wait list. We will only interview if there's place availability. So you would submit your application and then you would be on a wait list. This is our priority order. This is also on the website. I won't go through it in detail, but the number 4 is highlighted there. It's what we call Class A debenture or individual nomination rights. So if your family is wishing to gain a priority on the wait list, that's one route for families to consider. The cost of it is $500,000 for ESF schools. We also have it for Renaissance and Discovery College. The cost for that is $400,000. So if you're successful in gaining one of these nomination rights, if you're applying for K1 or Year 1 and you gain it, you will definitely get an interview. We will only process these if there's a possibility of you getting an interview and for a place. There's a deposit when you apply, which is $50,000. You go for the interview. If successful, then you pay the balance. If your child's unfortunately not successful, we do return the deposit to the family. The other priority I would like to highlight is number 8, which is the Hong Kong Top Talent Pass. So we recently put this on the priority list to help families that are coming into Hong Kong with the Top Talent Pass priority. So this will give you an added priority on the list, as opposed to most families will fall under number 10. So if you have a Top Talent Pass, the documents we request for you to upload them onto your application form with all your other documents, and that will prove to us that you are coming through on a Top Talent Pass priority. Something else that ESF needs to consider is the Hong Kong Education Bureau demands of ESF to meet the 70-30 requirement. What that means is that the government requires ESF to have 70% of our students holding an overseas passport. So if you hold a mainland passport, that is considered an overseas passport in the definition of things. So if you hold a mainland passport, that is to your advantage for your child. At the moment, because we need to meet that percentage, local families, unfortunately, need to wait longer on our waiting lists. as opposed to if an overseas family comes along on the wait list, they will be seen first. Key points to note, so primary school, the online application and the cost of the application is $2,800. The form will be, I was mentioning you can select up to 4 schools. The form, when it comes into the system, it will waitlist on your first preference school. It will not waitlist on 4 schools. It will only waitlist on 1 school. If there's opportunities, for example, at your second school, and that school is looking for applicants, we will then move the application over. So, for example, you choose Peak School, Bradbury School, and Kennedy School. You're on Peak School's list. They have no movement, but at Bradbury School, there's movement, and there's no waiting list on their year group. So your form would then be directed to Bradbury School for interview. So once you submit your online application form, you need to upload your supporting documents within the 7 days. So that's the flow process. So you're selecting your primary school, you determine your year group. Our year groups, we look at the child's date of birth from January to December. So the full year for that 1 year group. So for example, we are doing year 1 right now. So if your child is born in 2020, you should be applying for year 1 next September. So regardless of being born in December, we consider that a year 1. Submit your application form, then comes the interview, and then the offer. Okay, the interview process, as Bill mentioned, it's in English, and it's play-based for the younger year groups. We work with the students in a group, and then we also do one-on-one to find more English if required, and definitely for the upper year groups, we have some one-on-one with the students. Our teachers basically observe. So for kindergarten, they do observing. They will not necessarily interact with the child in kindergarten if the child is feeling anxious. So parents are required to come to the kindergarten interview, and there is play center. So the parents will be playing with your child, whereas the teacher will be observing and communicating with parents regards to your child. So that's information, the email addresses for the kindergarten team, primary team, and secondary team. We also have a hotline to call if you wish to speak to one of our colleagues. And I think I'll wrap up on my section.
Thank you, Ms. Wong, for your sharing. Please be seated. Let's go into the second part of the seminar. Other than international school option, we also have the honor to have Mr. Dennis Yuen, Principal of St. Paul's College, to share direct subsidy scheme schools within the Hong Kong education system. St. Paul's College is a prestigious secondary school known for its prolonged history and academic excellence. Let's give a big hand to welcome Principal Yuen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can I walk around? Can I? Yes, but if I walk around, then you don't have to focus on one spot. And that reduces the level of fatigue. Now that you have been here for an hour, so you need to pump up your energy a little bit. So I'm very glad to be able to share with you one aspect of the Hong Kong education system, and that is the direct subsidy schemes schools. My name is Dennis Yuen. I'm the principal of St. Paul's College, as Edwin has just introduced. St. Paul's College is a boys' school. It is the oldest school in Hong Kong, founded in 1851. We just celebrated our 170th anniversary. We are, of course, also a DSS school, and so that's why I'm introducing DSS school, and I'm using my school as an example. This is an all-boys school. In Hong Kong, you'll find that we do have single-sex schools, unlike those in the mainland. We have all-boys schools, we have all-girls schools, and we also have co-ed schools in Hong Kong. Now, like what I have taught my students, any good presentation has to start with the 5 W. So I would like to, within this 25-30 minutes, to talk about the what, the why, how, when, and then, what are DSS school? Why would you consider DSS schools in Hong Kong? And how and when to apply it? And last of all, some tips, some issue of adjustment if you do come to Hong Kong to study in schools in Hong Kong. So let's start with, let's try to clarify what DSS is and what DSS is not. DSS basically is part of the local education system, all right? And so they are really approved and audited and supervised by the EDB. So we are not a private organization. It's government approved, and you will find that predominantly, our students are predominantly Cantonese-speaking local students, all right? Our emphasis here is very much on training students to be bilingual or biliterate, which means they should be able to read and write in English and Chinese. And they're also trilingual, which means they can speak and they can understand English, Cantonese, and Putonghua. I think that's really one of the advantages of studying in Hong Kong, because on the one hand, we provide them with a lot of Chinese training. We have Chinese lessons, Chinese literature lessons, Chinese history lessons, so they learn to appreciate their own culture, their own identity, their own heritage. But at the same time, we also provide a very language-rich environment for them to develop their language abilities in English and in Putonghua. So our schools generally use English as the medium of instructions in all subjects. There are also Putonghua lessons, and there are also Chinese history lessons. I think that is important because in this way, we are trying to enable our students to be able to navigate in different cultures, so in the future when they work, they are able to work in Hong Kong, work in China, and work in overseas. On the one hand, they understand their own identity. On the other hand, they also learn to understand the Western worldview, and so they will be able to operate in any countries that they like. We are, of course, local education with an international outlook. As I told you before, we put a lot of focus on their own Chinese learning. At the same time, we help them to have a very good worldview so they understand. So we put in things like 17 Sustainable Development Goals in our curriculum so they do understand global issues. And last of all, the only difference between a DSS school and aided or government school is the fact that we, on the one hand, receive government subsidies. At the same time, we are also allowed to collect school fees. All right? So we are somewhat like a hybrid, whereas aided school or government school, they provide free compulsory education for students. ESF school or a private school, international school, they charge school fees. We are somewhat like a hybrid in between. We receive government subsidies on one hand, we also collect school fees. DSS schools are not just for the better off students. We want to emphasize this because even though we collect school fees, we understand that a school is a microcosm of society. And so we would like our students to come from different backgrounds, different cultures. And so you'll find that in all DSS schools, they do provide a very generous fee remission scheme. Schemes for families who perhaps find it difficult to afford the kind of education that they receive in DSS school. So we provide them with fee remission scheme for people from needy families. Talking about school fees, I have to say a little bit about school fees. We are actually not charging a lot, really. School fees varies from school to school, ranging from 10K a year to 80K a year. For St. Paul's College, we charge about 40.4K a year, which is actually not a huge amount of money. But we do have families in Hong Kong who cannot afford that, so we provide a very generous fee remission scheme for them to apply. The next thing I want to say is that even though we collect school fees, we are not a business setup. we are primarily, by and large, an education institution. All our decisions are not financially based. We consider the learning, emotional interest of our students our top priorities, even though we have to balance the book, all right? But many of our schools are actually church schools. We have a mission, and that is to nurture our younger generations so that they become responsible citizens for Hong Kong, for China, and for the world, really. So that's why we don't want to consider our relationship with our parents as being a business transaction. Education is never a business transaction here. We are not a service provider. You are not our clients, but we actually are partners in students' journey of self-discovery. We want to work with you together. So we don't want to consider that as a business transaction. We are primarily an education institution. Why would you consider DSS school, or what are the advantages of DSS school? As I have told you, because we, on the one hand, we receive government subsidies. On the other hand, we are allowed to charge school fees. With double stream of income, we have extra resources. With extra resources, we can actually do a lot of things. We have a lot of flexibility and autonomy in terms of our resource deployment. In terms of our curriculum design, we can offer different curriculum programs for our students. In terms of the way we recruit our students, we actually have full autonomy in selecting our students. In many of the aided schools or government schools, they have students allocated to them by the EDB according to where they live. Whereas DSS school, we welcome students from any parts of Hong Kong and also from China, and we select our own students. We can also provide additional student support service, and we also have better campus facilities in most DSS schools. First of all, of course, we have lower teacher-student ratio because we can have extra resources, so we can afford to recruit more teachers, so we can provide better personal attention to our students. Because teachers will have a lesser teaching workload, and at the same time, they have smaller classes, and they will be able to pay more attention to the learning needs as well as the emotional needs of our students. Also, we can deploy our teachers to look after different aspects of schoolwork. Like, for example, we do have a special team of teachers looking after those students, externally admitted students from mainland China. Because we are getting more and more students from mainland China, so we have a special team of teachers, especially set up to look after the students as well as the parents. And I think it's important to look after both the students and their parents, because they do have a lot of questions to ask, and we have to deal with all these questions. And because we have additional resources, we can afford to have additional programs, enrichment programs for our students. Like, for example, in my school, we organized this maths tours to Singapore. We visited Raffles Institute for some of our more talented math students. We took them to Singapore for a visit, and they learned Olympiad mathematics together with the students in Singapore. These are more talented students. Those who are more musically talented, we have master classes for them. We can afford to have master classes for, here we have music students, and we invited maestros from other parts of the world to teach them. And we can also afford to take students to this BET show in London, and they were there to showcase their invention. These are our STEAM students, and they were there to showcase some of the inventions. They set up a booth there, and they were able to interact with people from different parts of the world. Oops. And of course, we can also take students to perform in different places, and this is UK, Cambridge, Manchester, and they can perform there. They also compete in these places, and these are some of the enhancement program, additional programs for our students because of the extra resources that we are getting from school fees. So every dollar that we get from our parents, we spend them all on our students. So we are not a profit-making organization, really. And very often, we are actually running deficit because we want to provide many, many programs for our students. In terms of curriculum design, we also have autonomy in a sense. DSS schools are schools that can provide both the local university entrance examination as well as the IB or the international A-levels. Aided school or government schools are not allowed to offer IB or IAL. They can only offer DSE, which is the local examination, university entrance examination. DSS school, like my school, we have DSE as well as the international A-levels. International A-levels are, I think some of you probably know that they are actually the GCE, the English exam board in the UK. But this is done by international students. Other DSS schools offer DSE and also international baccalaureate. So students basically coming to DSS school, they have more choices. And even within DSE, we are allowed to have our own school-based development. So for example, for St. Paul's College, other than the DSE, we also put in the special component. We put in the research component in a DSE exam because honestly, we are not just training students for examination or for universities. We are training them for life. So we want to nurture our students to be able to do research. And so we put in a research component in our senior form studies. And other than that, we also have extra resources to provide student support. These are the student support teams that we have at school. Because really, growing up is not easy for some of the students. So particularly in high school, they do have a lot of problems, emotional problems, academic problems. And very often, we need to provide them with a lot of support. Of course, you do have all these in other government or aided schools. But with DSS school, for example, like social workers, when other schools have 2 social workers, we have 3. We have 2 educational psychologists working with us to look after our students, and we also are able to recruit student counselors. All these are our support team to help students to adjust in their high school life because they do come across problems every now and then. How and why? I hope I'm okay with the time. How to apply, when to apply, and probably these are some of the things you are more concerned with if you are interested in applying to schools in Hong Kong. There's a table here which probably summarizes the situation here about application period, selection procedures, and some of the remarks. Again, I'm using my school as an example. It varies from school to school. DSS school, unlike ESF, we don't belong to one organization. We are kind of independent of each other. So each school has their own recruitment or application timeline or process. I can only use my school as an example here, just to show you. Usually Form 1, application into Form 1 usually starts in November, December of the year before, all right? But I can tell you it is usually very, very competitive. Using my school as an example, every year we received about 1,600 applications. We only offer 110 places. So if you are thinking of getting into a school in Form 1, you have to expect that it is highly competitive, all right? And so it may not be easy to get in. Selection process is done by interviews, like what you hear from ESF. We have both English and Chinese or Putonghua interview if you want to, both one-on-one interview as well as group discussions. We are not allowed to give tests, not allowed by the Education Bureau, so we can only have oral interviews with students. And in fact, to us, our main concern, of course, is the language abilities of our students. Language abilities in terms of their English, because we are an English medium school, most of the subjects are done in English, and so their language proficiency is important. And of course, we do have Chinese lessons, and so they need to be able to read and write and to have certain level of proficiency in Chinese or in Putonghua. So that's Form 1 entry to St. Paul's College. We do have applications to be admitted to Form 2, Form 3, and Form 4. That's a little bit different because every year we do have vacancies in Form 2, Form 3, and Form 4, and we do take in students externally, all right? Application is open throughout the year, all right? But selection is on the basis of tests, all right? We give them a lot of tests because basically these are very academic tests that they need to be able to show us their abilities. So generally will be English, Chinese, and mathematics. These are 3 important tests that we give them. If you are applying to, let's say, to Form 4, we might actually also give tests in physics, chemistry, and biology in some of the subjects that you choose to do in Form 4. All right? Now, there's a word of caution here. I know students from mainland are very good at doing tests and examinations. Excellent, no problem at all. But you have to understand that when you come and do these tests, make sure you ask what are some of the topics that will be tested on, particularly in mathematics or in physics, chemistry, and biology. Because as I understand, the syllabus in China and the syllabus in Hong Kong are somewhat different. So some of these students coming to us, they do not do very well in these tests simply because we test them on topics that they have not learned before. So when you are invited to come and do these tests, please do ask what are some of the topics that you will be tested on, all right? The mathematic topics or the topics in physics, in chemistry, and biology. And of course, all these tests will be done in English, except Chinese, of course. All right, so all these tests are done in English, and so you have to be prepared. That's why I say you need more planning if you want to be admitted in Form 2, Form 3, and Form 4. Form 2 is actually a better year to enter a college or a school because, you know, it's still not very heavy. You can still, you need time to adjust. So you can actually kind of spend more time adjusting. Whereas Form 3 is an important year because Form 3 is the end of junior high and you will be asked to select the subjects in your senior high. And selection or entry into these subjects depends on your examination results. So that's why Form 3 is an important year. If you need a lot of time to adjust, then you'll find Form 3 a very difficult year because on the one hand, you have to adjust to a new school life. On the other hand, you have to deal with the exam pressure because you have to do well so that you can choose the right subject in Form 4. So Form 3, it's not a year that I would say I would recommend. Of course, you can't help it if your son at a particular age has to go to Form 3, you have to apply for that year. So I think Form 2 is a better year. Form 4, the problem with Form 4 is we may not be able to offer some of the subjects that you like. We have 13 electives for students to choose, but some of the popular subjects are often filled by our own students already. So let's say if you want to come and do physics here in Form 4, physics are usually filled by our students. So we might have to create extra places for you. So when you apply to Form 4, then there may not be you may not be able to do subjects of your own choice. All right, it all depends, of course. We don't have any entries or for Form 5 and Form 6 because these are examination years. And so we do not actually accept students to do Form 5 and Form 6. Mid-year entry, yes, some of the DSS schools, they do have mid-year entries. Mid-year entries, which means they start their school year in February. All right, because school year in Hong Kong starts from September to August. So mid-year entries means they start their school year in February. We did it for 1 or 2 years, but we don't find it very useful because if students join us in the middle of the year, it's actually harder for them to adjust. All right, so for St. Paul's College, we no longer have mid-year entries. We prefer students to start with us in September rather than in February. Because in September, you have more time to know your classmates, to know your friends. Whereas in February, before you know all your friends, you'll be doing your final exam very soon. So it's actually not very good for students to start their new school year in February. So my recommendation, of course, if you do think of coming to Hong Kong to start your studies in Hong Kong, it is much better off starting in September of the year rather than a mid-year entry. But of course, as I said, there may be other DSS schools which offered mid-year entries. And that, of course, is up to you to decide. As far as St. Paul's College is concerned, we do not have any mid-year entries. Now, I don't know whether we have primary school parents here, but the situation in primary school is more or less the same. Primary 1, highly selective, highly competitive, all right, because you're competing with a large number of students from kindergarten. We have our own primary school. We do have more or less direct entry from our primary school to our secondary school. All right, but there are DSS schools without a primary school. So in primary school, in P1, it's very competitive to get in. It's much easier for you to try P2, P3, or P4. With P3, there's no exam issues here. So P2, P3, P4 are both viable years for you to start thinking of getting your students, getting your children into the school. There will not be any admission in P5 and P6 because, again, these are more or less like exam years, and they are preparing for entries into colleges or high school. So the situation will be more or less the same as in primary school. I hope that makes sense. Then what? Oh, I talk about how and why. Then what? I do notice some of the adjustment issues that some of the students from mainland China, when they come to us, that they have to face. So what I'm doing here is actually use my school as an example to show you what are some of the things that I have observed and what are some of the issues that they may have that perhaps you need to be aware of. Language is always a problem because many of the students from mainland China, they can only speak Putonghua, and they have limited oral English, okay? And of course, they don't speak a word of Cantonese. And so sometimes they find it difficult in lessons, particularly when all the lessons are conducted in English. And there are, of course, English terms in geography and in history that may not be familiar to them. So they will find it hard to understand some of the lessons when it is conducted in English. Of course, we do assign buddies to help them. All right, we do have friends assigned to help them, and they will be able to help them with their schoolwork. But initially, when students study in an English language environment, they usually find it a little bit daunting and difficult. So it is not always easy for them. Language, another issue with language, of course, is sometimes when our students speak to the mainland students in English, they replied in Putonghua, which is a little bit odd to our students. So if we use English, we expect mainland students to reply in English. So I think it's important for mainland students to try and communicate with Hong Kong students. If they are talked to in English, then use English. And it's also not a bad idea to learn some Cantonese. And actually in our school, we actually provide Cantonese classes to help them learn Cantonese. Of course, only conversational Cantonese, but I think sometimes that's good enough because you will have to make friends. My advice to all these students from mainland China is that they have to make friends as soon as possible. The more friends they have at school, the more comfortable they will feel, and they will be able to adjust to their new school life more easily. All right? And let me jump a little bit to parents' expectations here. As I told you, they do have a lot of problems adjusting to their new school life. So initially, they may not be able to do as well as they expect. This is hard, especially for some of the students from mainland. They were usually top of their forms or top of their class. And when they come to Hong Kong, they find that they are not doing as well. And it's quite frustrating for them. But you have to understand it is actually normal because you have to adjust to a new school life. So parents and students, they need to manage the expectation a little bit. They have to understand it takes time to adjust. So if you don't do well this year, that is okay. You don't have to be all stressed about not doing well because when you were in mainland, you were position 1 or position 2, top of the class. If you are now 15 in the class, you feel bad about it. There's actually no need because you are coming to a new school making a lot of adjustments. So I think parents do not put too much pressure on their student and ask them to do well in class because you have to understand they are making a lot of adjustments here. All right? And so are the students too. Student support, one thing that I need to let you know, of course, we do provide a lot of support for our students. And social workers, they have a very important role to play. I understand in mainland China, you do not have any social workers at school. Whereas in Hong Kong, we do have a lot of social workers. And they are not just for students who have problems. You know, they interact and talk to all the students. You don't really have to have problem before you go and see a social worker. A social worker is there to listen to some of the worries that you may have, some of the problems that you may have, but he also wants to be friend with you. I find it, you know, parents from mainland China or students from mainland China, they are not comfortable with talking to our social workers. All right? They want to talk to the form teacher, they want to talk to the teachers, they do not trust a social worker. But social workers, they are professionals. They provide counseling, advice, and help to students. And so I think you should make good use of the social workers rather than just relying on the form teachers or the teachers. And finally, you have to understand in Hong Kong, our culture is very much, or our emphasis is very much on all-round education. The world has changed. The world has changed a lot. And our emphasis is not really just on acquisition of knowledge. Yes, getting into university, of course, is important. It's a passport to a better life, to prosperity. Yes, of course, you have to do well. But other than doing well academically, we do expect students to be able to have all-round development. They should also have interest in sports, in music, in arts, in many other different aspects of their school life. And that's why my advice to students is that they should take part in school activities so that they can enjoy a rich school life. It is important because the more they like the school, the better they will be able to work and the more motivated they will be. Other than sports, of course, music, arts, social service, community service, try to be involved and try to engage in all these activities. And parents too. I think parents should also engage with students in these activities so that they get to know more about the school. I think parents should develop that trust in the school. So communication between parents and the school is actually very important. You know, we have lots of activities at school. Adventure activities to build friendship, to build this camaraderie, this sense of brotherhood. And these activities are useful for them to make friends, for them to get to know one another. And I think it is important for students, other than just spending all their time doing the academic work, do take some time to be involved in these very interesting and exciting activities provided by the school. And these are opportunities for them to make friends with people. Like ESF and IB, we do have our SPC profile or SPC attributes. All right? We think, you know, this is a different world. Other than just academic learning, these are some of the soft skills or the skill sets or the mindset that are essential for them to be able to survive and to succeed in the 21st century. 21st century is very, very different. When we talk about AI, robotics, and whatnot, we don't need people who are just good at studying. We need people who are communicative. We need people who can work in teams. We need people who will be able to, who are problem solvers. We need people who care about the well-being of other people. So these are some of the attributes that we want to nurture in our school. And so my advice, of course, is that do not just focus on learning. When you come to Hong Kong, there shouldn't be that much stress on academic learning. Instead, enjoy your school life as much as possible, and that will make you a happier person. And of course, I do believe all the DSS school, we are all very welcoming schools. When you choose a school, make sure you find a school that has a welcoming culture. Welcome students from different culture, from different countries. And I think that is important. All right? Last of all, if you do have any questions, this is my email. I'm happy to answer them. But I have to say, I am not an agent, so I will not be able to handle tons of questions, and I will not be able to answer them all at once. So I'm a principal. I have other things to do. But if you do have burning questions that you would like to ask me, you're welcome. And I hope you will find these sessions useful today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Principal Yuen. Please be seated. It's a very fruitful sharing on the features of the Direct Subsidy Scheme schools with useful admission tips. Up next, we will have the question and answer session. Please raise your hand if you have any question, and we'll get to you as soon as possible. Meanwhile, friends from online can place your question on the chat room, and we'll also try to raise them as well. May I now invite Principal Garnett, Ms. Wong, and Principal Yuen to come up to the front again. May I invite the first question from the floor? If not, then I'll try to, okay, here.
Thank you very much. I have a question. I'm coming to Hong Kong for work in December. So my kids is taking classes in Shanghai now, but they can come in January. So I would like to ask for your advice in the Dennis. Yes. What's your recommendation? Should I apply them for the spring semester in the middle of the school year, or should I wait to go to a public school first and then apply for the DSS school in the next semester? Thank you.
It's hard to answer questions like that because it all depends on your situation. If your child has to come with you and he has to study here, obviously you have to find a school that allowed immediate entries. Of course, you can try public school or aided school. And as I said, there are other DSS schools who will allow immediate entries. I personally do not recommend that, but if in your situation you have to, you have to. In terms of coming to my school, school term has to start in September. And so you may want to wait, and first of all, you have to think of a school that you want to go to first, obviously, all right? Not any other school. So if your school, let's say, all right, if you are interested in coming to St. Paul's College, and St. Paul's College does not have media entries, you might have to wait a little while so that you can enter St. Paul's College in September, all right? But if your preference is in other school and they do have media entries, then of course you will have to apply so that so that your child can start in February or January. I hope that answered the question.
I also have some questions from the chat room. Between DSE, IB, and IAL, may I ask your advice on how to choose them? Yeah, sure, all of you.
Okay. Again, not very easy to answer this question. Let's put it this way. In terms of entry into universities, both DSE, IB, and IAL allow you to enter local university. DSE, you apply through JUPAS, whereas IB and IAL allows you to apply to local universities through the non-JUPAS stream. So all these are good programs to get your kids into universities. All these are also very good programs to get your kids to apply to university overseas, because DSE is recognized overseas, IB and IAL are recognized overseas. Now, in terms of the exam in each of these programs, it's a little bit tricky. With A-levels, you can have multiple seatings, in a sense that you have to do 24 exams in 2 years. Okay, you have to do 24 papers in 2 years, because in our school we offer 4 subjects: physics, chemistry, biology, maths, and all further maths. You have to do 4. Out of the 4 subjects, each subject has 6 papers. So altogether you have 24 papers to do. But the advantage of IAL is the fact that if you don't do well this time, you can redo it again next time. All right, so it allows multiple seating in that sense. I like IB because it's divided into higher level or standard level. If you are good at certain subjects, you can choose a higher level and do the lower level ones for those you are less comfortable with. All right, I think there are altogether 6 subjects to do, if I understand correctly. All right, and of course it's a very all-round program, because you have to do extended. You have to do research. You have to do EE, extended essays. You have to do theory of knowledge, and you also need to do the CAS when you have to do community service and all that. So it's a very comprehensive program. DSE is a local examination system, which offers students a very broad base of knowledge, because other than the 4 core subjects, Chinese, English, mathematics, and citizens and social development, you have to do 3 other electives. All right, you can do physics, geography, and then visual arts. Any combination you like. So it is actually very good for students who like to have a broad base of knowledge. And I think in that sense, it is a good system. And of course, other than that, you still have other things like music, arts, community service, in the same way, much the same way as the caste system that you have to be involved in. It's very hard to explain all these 3 programs in a few minutes' time. It's not easy at all. I think each has its own merits. It depends on what kind of students you are, really. IB put a lot of emphasis on language skills, because you have to do research yourselves. You're asked to do research, so it places a lot of demands on the students' language skills. I think that's all I can say. I'm not sure whether they can actually supplement this.
No, I think you've summed it up nicely. Again, it's difficult to go through all 3, particularly when I don't know much about 2 of them. But with the IB and the diploma, it certainly is challenging. You have to be good at all areas, and so for some children, it's not. For some students, it isn't the best option. So it's probably, like as mentioned before, it's about the student. It's about their abilities, and that's something you'd have to talk to the school about to make the best decision.
Thank you. I have another question for Bill. So for EFS school, how can we better prepare for the school interview, and what's the area of assessment?
The area of assessment, great question. It's actually just language-based. So we the best way to prepare your student for a primary assessment at an ESF school is to ensure that they're having opportunities to play in English, so to play with others, to have play dates, to ensure that they're watching, perhaps watching programs, TV programs or YouTube programs that are English-based. So we're looking for their level of writing. So we, for year year 3 up, we effectively, year 2 I have to write a little bit, but year 3 up we're looking for their writing and we're also looking for their reading. There's no math assessments, it's all language based. So it's really, because a lot of what we teach is in English, so that they have to have a certain level of English to be able to access our curriculum, and so we have assessments to determine that. So the more opportunities they have to practice in English, the better.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question here.
Hi, thanks for the sharing. Yeah, I'd like to ask first Principal Yuen. So what kind of university and St. Paul's College students going to? Yeah, that's the first question. The second question for Bill. So I saw the university, the map for the graduate from your school is like 70% in Hong Kong local university, and the biggest majority is in the UK, and the second one, the 17% of the universities in States. So if your school is IB, how do the students enter the local university? And also, why is the UK much more than the United States university? Thank you.
Okay, let me start first. Let me put it this way: about 70% of our students will go to Hong Kong UUCU or Hong Kong UST. These are the 3 major universities in Hong Kong. So around 70% of our students will go to these major universities. About 25% of our students will go overseas to studies, mainly to the UK. So they will go to Imperial College, King's College, Cambridge, Oxford, and Durham, and a few others. Only a small minority of them will go to Canada or Australia. But these are some of the possible places that they do go to. But for some reasons, very few of them actually go to the States. I don't know why. All right, I think the US has a very good education system too, but very few of our students actually try US. The majority of our students who go overseas, they usually end up in the UK. All right, and just to answer your questions about IB and local universities, with IB, they can actually enter local universities through the non-JUPAS system, which is possible. So let's say, for example, my school, I have 5 classes of students doing DSE. They will apply to local universities through the JUPAS stream, which is a centralized application system. We have 1 class of IAL, which is the A levels. And after they have got the result, they apply individually to different schools through the non-JUPAS system. And they accept both, really.
Yeah, and just in terms of where our students go, now just to point out, they're not students from my school, they're students from across the foundation, so that the 5 secondary schools and the 2 through schools. Again, what Derek said, it's where the students want to go. So a lot of the students want to go to the UK. They've got the courses, they've got the universities that they would like to be part of. When they're scoring the results that they're scoring, the students get, the universities are very keen to have those students who are scoring 40 points or plus. So the students really get to choose. So they're choosing to go to the UK over America at this point. And the numbers, Canada numbers used to be higher. But now we're noticing that some of our students are choosing to be trained to be doctors at the universities here in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong have done a really good job at the universities of attracting students. And of course, they're keen to have IB students as well. In the past, I've had Hong Kong university lecturers on my school council who represent the community, and they've shared with our parents just how attractive IB students are to the university. So they're keen to have IB students.
Okay, we have a question.
Thank you all. First question for Bill, and I would like to know that besides that, the HKIS is more like American systems. So what is really the big difference between your school and theirs? And second question is for Dennis. So I would like to know what is the AP average score for your school for this year? Thank you.
I'll start now. I need to stress I'm no expert on HKS and their curriculum, but I do know it's American-based. So what I can say is that IB is more of an international curriculum. It's obviously recognised throughout the world. It's a very popular. When I arrived in Hong Kong 17 years ago, some of our parents were a bit concerned about IB and will it get their students into university. That's completely changed now because universities really want IB students. So it's again, I don't know much about HKIS, but it's got a great reputation. The schools in Hong Kong, across the board, the international schools, the DSSS schools, it's a privilege to be part of that principal network and work with those colleagues because they're all great schools. They'll reflect the community that they represent. So, for example, even at Peak School, our curriculum is slightly different to maybe that of Sha Tin Junior School because we're representing the community that we're in. And I imagine HKS will be representing their community, which is obviously more American-based, so therefore their curriculum will be more around American-based, whereas the ESF is more around the International Baccalaureate, which is an international curriculum. I hope that helps.
I'm not sure what you mean by AP, AP score. Is it advanced placement or? Well, we don't have IB. We only offer IAL. Just to give you some examples, the highest scored in A levels will be A star, and we do 4 subjects, so 4 A stars. About 14 of our students have 4 A stars. We have a class of around 30. We don't have IB. I think it's kind of insane to offer IB and IAL at the same time because they are very different. So you will find that most DSS schools offer either DSC plus IB or DSC plus A level. So for us, we do not offer IB because we find it difficult to offer IB within the local school system because the government requirement for us, because we receive government subsidies, is that we have the majority of the students will have to do DSE. We can only have a minority, maybe 1 class to 2 classes of students doing the either IB or IAL. With IB is really a school within a school, and we have to charge them higher school fees, much higher than the DSE student. St. Paul's College, we put a lot of emphasis on equality, brotherhood. We want everyone to be the same. So we don't want to end up in a situation when student A say, I'm an IB student, I pay more school fees, you're a DSE student, you pay less, or I'm an IB teacher, you are not an IB teacher. So we think that's very divisive to our school. So that's the reason why we do not offer IB, but IB in itself is a very, very good program. So we choose to offer international A levels instead because it's more or less quite similar to the DSE.
I believe the Q&A session has come to the end. Let's give a big applause to Principal Garnett, Ms. Wong, and Principal Yuen once again. Please take a seat. As the seminar is closing, we would like to thank ESF and St. Paul's College for the great support. Before you leave, it would be much appreciated if everyone could fill in the feedback form. And thank you all for joining us today. See you next time.